right, okay. This is basically a wrap-up video on the Collins 51J-1, the model that doesn't exist. But I want to tell you, I found out what PTO stands for. It stands for Permeability Tuned Oscillator. What that means is they use a ferrite slug that moves in and out of a core, or in and out of a coil form, which has a coil wrapped around it, and as it moves in and out, it takes 2 turns to move in and out. And I think it might be in the frame. This is the PTO oscillator here. Now this oscillator, according to the write-up, doesn't have the ferrite slug, and this is an earlier model, but PTO actually stands for permeability, something like that, tuned oscillator. What I want to discuss with you is the reason I bought this radio is I believe that the front end was tuned and a bunch of other things were tuned at the same time. And then as I delve into it, I realize, yes, some frequencies have the very front end. The lower frequencies have a tuned front end. Then as you go up in frequency, this section here, where these things move up and down, the band switch, let me throw the band switch up and down. Maybe you can see them. You can see them going up and down. And of course, you may see the set of gears. You may see the drum turning. Let me do it a little bit more. All right, that looks pretty good. Back here, there's 7 coils that go up and down. Hopefully you can see that going down, coming back up. And that tunes the front end on only 3 bands. The other coils on that are used on the variable IF section and around one of the mixers. So depending on what band you're on, they use different methods to tune that band. Now, you got to remember, when you're in lower in frequency, the bandwidths, the frequencies are basically sort of further apart, and then as you go higher in frequency, they get closer together, and it's very hard to get a coil that's got enough Q to make any difference on the higher frequencies. So trying to tune the front end of the radio is very tricky as you go up in higher frequencies. But the BC348 does it up to, what does that thing go to, 18 megacycles? But anyway, this goes to 30, and each band is only 1,000 kilohertz long, and that's what there's 30 bands on this radio to go from AM broadcast all the way to 30 megacycles. And it's a very interesting radio. It's too heavy. It's got too many tubes. It's overpriced. It needs a lot of tender, loving care. There are people that love this. See, they're newer in the hobby than me. I've been restoring radios, repairing radios for so many years that when I see one that's been neglected, I really don't want to be involved with it, because you start finding stuff that the person did to it. Maybe they'll have a spring that don't belong in one place, and you know, where are you going to get these parts? But I just wanted to tell you, this does have a tuned front end that tracks. It retunes as you're turning your tuning knob on the AM broadcast band. It is tuning the front aerial, which that's what I like to see on a radio. Also, I told you it takes 10 turns of the PTO to go from one side to another. So in other words, the PTOs that are round have a ferrite slug in it. It takes 10 turns to make it move just for a 1 kilohertz band. Each band is only 1 kilohertz wide. What else did I wanted to tell you on this thing? You know, after I get done with a video, I always get upset that I forgot to tell you something. But, you know, if you buy one of these, you're going to own one. And you might spend months taking it apart and different things to it. But you got to remember, what you're going to end up with, the light at the end of the tunnel, is a radio that receives only a few frequencies that are left on shortwave. So it's going to be more like I get really interested in the circuitry. And it took a while for me to wrap my head around this thing, what they're doing. You know, in one instance, they're tuning the front end, next instance, they're not. And this basically is a bandpass section. And they do that with some ferrite coils now. And in my case, I use ferrite core, ferrite toroids, and varactor diodes to do what they're doing here. But I wanted that for the front of my radio, for the front end. They basically used that tuning method for the would be the band. Well, it's the front end. It's just that once you turn the band switch to its locking position, these band passes, or the one that's being used, it doesn't move after that. It stays steady for the whole band. And then when you tune the frequency, the coils for the mixer might move, but the band you're on might not have any more tuning being done to the front end. It's just, you're just gonna have to just get the schematic. And they use dotted lines between these ferrite rods, or the coils themselves, on the diagram. And it's very misleading at first. It looks like everything's tuning together because everything, but what they meant on this section was when you turn the band switch, they move together. And there's cams on the back here that position them, and the cams are linearly set. So when you go from band to band to band, it turns the coil just the right amount for that band. And in most cases, it's 3 coils that get turned together. It's a Rube Goldberg way of doing something. That's how they did it then. And you can see, in other words, I like the evolution of a radio, and I like to see where the solid state guys got their design ideas from. And they borrow from this place, they borrow from that place, they put the radio together, and then they usually mess up something, and then somebody will say, doesn't have good dynamic range, and the audio's terrible, the audio's pinched, the radio's too heavy. It's just, oh, and this thing does not have sideband. It has a BFO, but it doesn't have a product detector. Now, the BC348 must have been just, it does a sideband. The BFO is injected into a tube through a grid. This is injected into the top of a plate with a capacitor. And you could change the tube. I know how to do this. I've done this before. You change one of the tubes that has an extra grid on it, and you can usually get it to fit in the same socket, the same wire, and all you got to add is a resistor and a capacitor, and then you're going to have to redo your BFO. There's going to be a little bit of change in that, the way it's loaded down. But this radio, I would only suggest it to someone that's bought a lot of radios, and they really want a challenge. Okay, that's what this radio is. It's a challenge. It's got gears. I didn't see any real backlash gears, but they're probably in there. 11 tubes, 3 IF cans, which that's what you want to see. It's got a full wave bridge, not a full wave bridge. Yeah, it's full wave rectification for the power supply. Oh, it's got a regulator tube for the for the voltage that goes to the PTO. It's got everything, but it's very heavy. It's so much mechanical that you'll really spend a long time taking it apart, putting it back together, getting it calibrated again. And if you really look at this thing, the ferrite rods are hanging on wires on this rail system, and as you tune it, it lowers and raises them in coils. It's wacky. It's total wacky. It's the same system as they used in car radios. If you've ever taken an old car radio apart. It's very interesting. This is not worth $500. Would I pay $530? It's not worth it. The education, yes, but an education in the field, that's dead. Shortwave is basically dead. There's a few stations on every night. A lot of people rent time, so the programs they run on it is basically the same as AM talk radio. It's political stuff. I don't want to hear that. When I was growing up, shortwave had the country would be telling you about places if you would come to visit, and if you send them your name and address, they'll send you a verification card. They'll also send you some travel stuff if you want to go to their country. It was totally different. Okay, there was propaganda. You know, Russia had a bazillion stations on. The United States had a bazillion stations on. And as you tuned up and down the dial, trying to find the smaller countries, you would keep landing on satellite countries of the Russia. You know, Sofia, Bulgaria, Czechoslovakia. I think I got those two right. But in other words, it's changed. And in my mind, I haven't made the change. In other words, I still go back and love old radios. And this was totally different. I kept looking at the schematic. I kept looking at the physical pictures. And I learned I wasn't getting anywhere. And I looked at other people's videos, and they basically, ooh, you know, I make fun of people. I had this coil winder thing I bought. I think originally it was $15 at the back of a magazine. You can wind coils. Well, last night, someone, YouTube suggested to me the coil winder. And I clicked on it, and the guy's got it all put together wrong. And two videos that were a waste of time. And I'm saying to myself, let me make sure I do a video, and I actually tell you something that you're not going to know from looking at a website, and you're not going to know from reading. And that's what I try to do on my videos. So people are like, why didn't you show it working? Oh my God, you know, those people. That's why I shut the comment section off. And I got people leaving comments on other videos. Hey, how come you shut the comment section off? Because I don't want stupid comments. I still get the guy on the my coil winder using Arduino. Please, sir, send me project. That's it. No address, no nothing. Please, I have to track the guy down. And who? He thinks I actually have the thing documented, and I'm going to send it to him. I can't believe how many stupid people are out there. I'm going to say it. There's some really stupid people out there, and you just turn the news on. It's sad, and I'm like trying to say, well, let me show people this. Let me show these other videos. The guy takes it out of the box. He throws it together real quick. He showed a coil in a plastic bag that probably came with it. He didn't wind it. He's got it all put together wrong. That coil winder is a piece of junk. What I did learn on it is when you want a wave coil, you have to have an odd amount of turns. It can't be an even amount on the gears. Otherwise, if the gears were even, as it went back and forth, it would lay the string down or wire on top of itself. And that's what happened when I used the step-in motors. But knowing that I needed an odd amount, rather than change the gear, I added a little an error step every so many times, and it fixed it from laying it down on top of it. So I've been through a lot of projects. I stay with them till they're done. This is the most money I've ever spent. I think on a radio that wasn't, you know, solid state. And it's interesting, but, you know, I wish I could get rid of it. You know, I wish I could get rid of this now. I know how it works. It's not exactly the way I want to work. Having it being dual or triple conversion, depending on what band you're on, doesn't help anything anymore, because there's hardly any frequencies on anymore that are too close to each other. So you really don't need dual conversion or a real selective radio. Back in the old days, or even maybe now when they do CW during a contest, you got you're copying a station that's real weak, that's far away, and right next to the frequency is a guy that's closer to you that's got a stronger signal. So if you don't have the selectivity, you're not going to be able to copy the weak guy. That's when you need a dual conversion radio under those circumstances. But as far as shortwave listening, no, you need sensitivity. You got to have a good aerial. You got to have good atmospheric conditions, and there's got to be a station on there to listen to. And that's the problem. You know, I think there's 3 United States shortwave stations now, and they're independent. They're not government owned, and you can rent time. You could put your own show together and give them the tape, pay them, and they'll put that up there. There's some type of religious one on there. They have like mooing cows and stuff in the background. There's some real wacky stuff out there. I just want to say that I think that's it. I think this is it for the series of this thing. That's it.